I went through Israeli archives and was able to find these resurfaced documents of a conversation between the CIA counterintelligence chief at the time during John F. Kennedy's administration with the mayor of Jerusalem. And it sheds light on just how close, like very, very friendly, their relationship was. Now, keep in mind, again, these documents are not from U.S. archives. They're not from CIA archives. They're not from FOIA request documents that were released from the United States. They're in Israeli state archives. And there are about a few documents here. The only way I was able to actually access these was because I had to have a VPN set to Israel. If you go on Israel state archives right now on your computer, the website doesn't allow you to go through. They don't allow international users. You just have to download a VPN in order to access their state archives. And I was able to find these. Now, why is this important? I'm going to go through these letters. This is actually really, really interesting. Important to note, James Angleton, this guy right over here, he was the CIA counterintelligence chief at the time during John F. Kennedy's administration. If you guys have been following me for a while, you know I've made a lot of videos on this guy. And while John F. Kennedy was fighting really with David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, to stop the development of nuclear weapons, the chief of counterintelligence at the CIA, James Jesus Angleton, this man right here, was blackmailing John F. Kennedy, or sorry, not blackmailing, was backstabbing John F. Kennedy and going against his wishes and working with the Israelis in the development of their nuclear weapons, specifically directly straight with the Mossad. Straight with the Mossad. So now let's get into some of these documents I'm about to show you. This is Theodore Kolik. And this man right here, he had played many different roles in Israel. Initially, at one point, he was the mayor of Jerusalem. Prior to that, he worked in Israeli intelligence within the Mossad. And that's really how his relationship with James Angleton started to flourish. It's during his time when James Angleton was working at the CIA, and this guy was working within Israeli intelligence, within the Mossad, and working in these spaces. And they started to build a very close relationship. Whenever James Jesus Angleton would go over to Israel, they would meet up. And it got very, very close to where they started sending letters to each other, but the letters weren't being addressed to the CIA. They started getting addressed to James Angleton's personal residence. And the only way we really know this now is because of these documents. And again, these documents are from Israeli archives. That's why you'll see that there's this tab here in Hebrew, which is pretty interesting. So I'm just going to go ahead and go back and forth with you guys on some of these letters. Mr. and Mrs. James Angleton, Dear Jim and Cicely, this is just a little Christmas gift. This was written in 1955. So much prior to, this is, what is this? This is 8 years before John F. Kennedy was really fighting with Israel regarding their nuclear weapon development. And we have this very strong relationship, even 8 years prior, with the chief of counterintelligence at the CIA, before John F. Kennedy was really in the picture, and the Mossad, the chief of counterintelligence with the Mossad. This is just a little Christmas gift. I'm trying to do something about tourism in this country, but it is bad luck to have chosen, apparently, the most inappropriate time to make such an attempt. Nevertheless, along with many other things, we are trying to develop a souvenir industry in Israel. I'm sending you herewith a small sample of our efforts with warmest greetings and best wishes for a very happy holidays, Theodore Kolik. And there's this back and forth several times. I believe this is a 6 documents. And again, December of 1956, Dear Jim, here's this little nameplate for your door. Brings it with warm New Year's greetings, and it's really just showing you just how close. But look here at where this is addressed. It's addressed to 4814 North 33rd Road, Arlington, Virginia, to Mr. Angleton. And again, kindest regards. Now we have January 2nd, 1957, and they're talking about signed copies of books, and he says, Dear Jim, and he's talking about visit. He had an author visit in Israel. He is on staff with Saturday Evening Post. And again, just going back and forth, really just acting like they're brothers. Now, this part is interesting. I am writing you this because some years ago, Abraham Jaffa was the recipient of the aqualung, which you obtained for me, and this instrument was the most treasured, more than any of the guns or pieces of armament, pieces of equipment that this column took down to Sharm el-Sheikh. He gave me a glorious report on the diver's paradise he found there, and the event and even the coral beds, Elliot cannot compare it to. So, I mean, James Jesus Angleton, it seems like he was even giving them scuba diving equipment. This is how close they were, that they were, he was, this is kind of the relationship that they had with each other. And now, what's really interesting, and I remembered his name when I found when I found these documents, because what isn't new, and I don't want to take credit for discovering. I found this. This is resurface. What isn't new though is it was known that they had a close relationship. I previously haven't seen these documents ever before, so this just sheds light on just how close the relationship was. Now, what's interesting though, and the reason I remember this guy's name, Theodore Kolik. Here's another letter from him in 1958. Dear Jim, it gives me great pleasure to send you this copy of our 10th anniversary album, which has just come off the press today. The pictures in it are not as good as yours, but there are more of them. And this is the last one in this archive here. And these were the only documents that I could find when I searched up James Angleton in Israeli state archives. I've been doing a lot of digging today on the Angletons. I submitted so many documents to the National Archives, to the CIA, to the FBI. The amount of FOIA requests I did today are pretty insane. So hopefully I get something back in a few years. Despite that, though, regardless, Theodore Kolik. This name, I remember this name immediately when I started reading this, and I remember the names because when James Angleton, the CIA counterintelligence chief, this dude over here, when this guy died, the Mossad threw a secret ceremony for him in Jerusalem. This is kind of old news now. You've probably a lot of you guys might have seen this already, that when James Angleton died, again, the CIA counterintelligence chief at the CIA, the Israeli Mossad put a memorial for him in Israel. I believe 2 memorials. Here's one of them. And then there's another one right over here, and it says James. This is a Rothschild's one. Where's the James Angleton one? This one right over here. Here it is. In memory of our dear friend James Jim Angleton from 1917 to 1987. And it says about the same exact thing in Arabic. And this is, again, in Israel. In Israel, the Mossad held a secret ceremony. So why do I bring up Teddy Kolik? Here's the actual Washington Post article. This was posted in December 4th of 1987. The most powerful members of Israeli intelligence establishment, past and present, came together in the clandestine conclave on a barren hillside last week to plant a tree. The head of the pathological secretive spy agency Mossad was there, as was his counterpart with Shin Bet, the Israeli Internal Security Service, and they were there to pay tribute to James Jesus Angleton, or James Jesus Angleton. I believe it is James Jesus Angleton, actually. I read an article once, and I remember they specifically stated it was pronounced the Spanish way. So anyways, though, it talked about how James Angleton was such a staunch Zionist. And this is the part where I remembered Teddy Kolik's name. Jerusalem Mayor Teddy Kolik, who rose from his sick bed to attend the ceremonies, told the small crowd, "We commemorate a great friend who saw Israel-U.S. relations through their most difficult period in the 40 years of Israel's existence. Normally, no government official sneezes in the city without a press release being issued. For the Angleton ceremonies, however, even though several prominent public figures attended the 2 ceremonies, including Rabin, Kolik, and the U.S. ambassador, the camera-shy Mossad insisted that both events remain secret. I guess the one reason is that if the tree falls in the forest and no one is there to see it, it didn't happen." So it was a very secret ceremony at the time, and then I guess it was reported on after it was kind of leaked in the press. Eventually, some people kind of made it, and they ended up finding the ceremony, I believe is what I read. Some 2 reporters or something were like kind of hanging out behind the sidelines, and they were able to find out about it. But this is what's interesting. We found these documents, again, Israeli archives, and now that I know that this is in Israeli archives, this means that our government is hiding these, because I couldn't find these from our end. But if they're being sent from James Angleton to Teddy Kolik, and the Israeli archives have it from Teddy Kolik's end because they have those same documents, that means we should also have these exact same documents, and it should be released from the CIA. They should be part of the JFK assassination records. They should be released on our end too. It's out there, so it doesn't matter, but what does matter is the fact that it should be released on both sides because it's two-way communication. And if these were in the JFK assassination records, that means they should be there. And maybe it is. We also have to keep in mind, I've submitted a lot of FOIA requests at this point to the National Archives, to the FBI, to the CIA. So far, out of all of the ones I've submitted, I've only gotten like one back that's actually good. But what I realize is all of these documents are really messy. They're all over the place. So maybe I'll just give the benefit of the doubt to the fact that we have a very disorganized government. And maybe the documents are somewhere and it's not anything that they're, that they're really trying to intentionally hide, because this is just back and forth regarding banter between him and the mayor of Jerusalem. So this is not top secret sort of stuff. You know what I mean? Israel, by the way, has a much larger gag order when it comes to government records. This is the only thing to James Jesus Angleton that I was able to find. But I did submit a request for a lot of stuff regarding James Jesus Angleton today. Hopefully, I'll get it back within 2 years. We'll see. But what's so interesting here is that it really paints a picture of just how long their relationship was. This is way, way beyond before John F. Kennedy. I mean, keep in mind, he was James Angleton was the one behind the Israeli desk at the CIA. So, for those who don't know, the way things kind of worked, Israel and the CIA really formed within a year of each other. And the way things worked at the time is that at the time, and this is coming, now I've kind of memorized the article, I'll show it to you guys in a moment here. At the time, in the early 60s, when things were really just getting started, in the CIA, anybody that would work within the CIA, there were basically folders for every country. And it was out in the open for everybody within the CIA. So that means people within the same level of security clearance would be able to access folders regarding different countries, or they weren't, it wasn't at least under complete control of one person for one country, and nobody else saw what was going on. That's typically what it was. But then CIA, people within the CIA started reporting that with the moment that Angleton got into the CIA, he decided that he really wanted to take control of the Israeli account at the CIA, and he made it his little baby. And all of a sudden, he really pushed everybody out. And there's an article titled The Israeli Account. I bet you I can quickly find it if I just Google it right now so I can pull it up. Israeli Account, Angleton, CIA. And the moment that he took over this Israeli account, everything started becoming very, very hush-hush. Here it is. Let me go ahead and share my screen here so you guys can see this. There we go. The Israeli account. Now, this was a article that was released. It says a sanitized copy, though. This was released in 2011. Let me zoom in here so you guys can see the word sanitized right there. So whenever something says sanitized copy, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. That means the government released the article, but they may have removed a word, or they may have even kind of changed the way certain things are written to not make it seem as bad. That's what sanitized copy means. They kind of cleanse it a little bit. But regardless, it's the best we have, so that's all, so that's what we're just going to go ahead and read. This was initially published December 1986, and then I don't know, I guess it was withheld, and then it was released again in 2011. But anyways, now, U.S. security concerns date back to the very beginning of the CIA's relationship with Israel. For almost 25 years, that relationship came under James Angleton, the agency's legendary chief of counterintelligence from the late 1940s until 1974. Working, and this is how really Angleton became a staunch Zionist, because he's not Jewish, by the way. He's not. I think his mother was Mexican, I believe. He's half Mexican, half white. He was a Catholic. Don't quote me on that. I know he was some Christian denomination. Working with the Jewish underground, he helped Jewish refugees emigrate to Palestine. So he was in Europe, he was in Italy. Angleton led the post-war remnants of the spy organization in Italy while he was only in his late 20s. Those efforts would give him a special stature among Israelis because he helped Jewish refugees go to Palestine. Now, I previously had a guest on, and we were talking a lot with a few people now about how James Angleton, one thing he was really, really obsessed with was communism, or one thing he was really, really focused on was stopping communism. And he was, especially keep in mind, this is Soviet era, and we're in the United States, and there's this Cold War with communism. And Angleton also felt like the Israelis were useful in that they would give intelligence on the Soviets, because there was a lot of Soviet Jews emigrating to Israel, to Palestine at the time. So he thought he could get intelligence from them, and he wanted to remain close to them for that purpose as well. And then also because he was just simply a staunch Zionist. He was motivated in part within the counterintelligence, in part by the belief that the Mossad, oh, this is exactly what I was saying, the Israeli intelligence service could provide a rich load of information about Soviet operations. Initially, Angleton handled the account personally in Washington. His first Israeli counterpart was Teddy Kollek. His first Israeli counterpart was Teddy Kollek, then a minister at the Israeli embassy, now mayor of Jerusalem. That's this Teddy Kollek here, the same Teddy Kollek that these Israeli documents, from the Israeli archives showed us. So, I mean, these guys were best buds. I mean, really, they were sending each other gifts. They were on a first name basis. They were sending, they were talking about each other's wives. They were happy anniversary gifts. They were very, very close. So this was a very, very personal relationship. Listen, look here. P.S. I hope you received the fishing tackle, which was left behind at the embassy. If not, a driver would know where it is. So, I mean, they're sharing fishing bait. The guy gave him a scuba diver tank. Seems like something to that degree. They're friends. So he's friends with this dude way before, 8 years prior to John F. Kennedy. Keep in mind, John F. Kennedy was also a young president. And this guy, James Angleton, was older at the time. He already had his knowledge within the CIA. So he probably felt like John F. Kennedy was just more of a nuisance to him, really. He felt like John F. Kennedy was a nuisance to him. And the article goes on, and it says, impressed with Angleton, Jim is by no means an ordinary person, Kollek wrote in his autobiography. He is an original thinker. No, I didn't know Kollek had an autobiography. I'm going to actually search that up later. The Israeli account quickly became a separate forbidden territory to those who did not work on it in the CIA. This may not have been so. One former CIA officer tells, perhaps, of the earlier days of the account. For a time, this man says, the work of the staff handling Israeli operations was out in the open, just like that involving any other country. So that's exactly what I was telling you guys about there, how it was really just out in the open for everybody. One day, however, staff members arrived at CIA headquarters to find that their files, their desks, and everything else had been vanished, and that they were to be transferred to other sections. Only later did they learn, according to the story, that Angleton had taken over. The CIA's clandestine services, which carries out espionage and other covert operations, consists of separate staff, of which counterintelligence is one of them, and a collection of geographical decisions. So this is what happened. And under Angleton, the Near East Division of the CIA's clandestine services desk had to handle each country except Israel. Israel was in effect Angleton's special domain. The guy took it over. This is why I mean, you guys know I've done how many videos on John F. Kennedy and James Angleton at this point? Probably I'd say at least over 15. I think so. And the more I read it, the more I genuinely just get so infuriated, because one, I know we can solve. I know that everybody, we have our theories, and I feel like the assassination theory I have behind John F. Kennedy really is like pretty weighted in evidence now. But I know we can solve it. Like, I know we can definitively solve the JFK assassination to where we have the evidence to officially close the books. I really believe we do, and I feel like they're just hiding it. I really do. I really think that we can still solve it. Maybe not every single nook and cranny of it, but I think there's a lot more information that they're still hiding. And I don't think that they're still hiding information. I know that they are, because there are files that I'm requesting that are not public, which means that they're hiding stuff. So one of them, for example, is after James Angleton left the CIA. Oh my gosh, his name is slipping my mind. But somebody within the CIA afterward decided to write do tons of interviews on Angleton. I think, what were they called? The clam investigation, or the clam clandestine or something. Somebody decided to do tons of interviews on Angleton, really investigate Angleton after he left the CIA. A really large 4,000 page 12 different volumes, I believe, 4,000 pages of information on Angleton, his work, his connections, everything. CIA still has it. They still haven't released it. Jefferson Morley, who's one of the big JFK authors, he wrote a book on James Angleton. It's probably one of the most thorough books on James Angleton. While he was writing the book in 2015, the CIA heard about the fact that he was writing this book, and he was using information. He was using some of these pages from this 4,000-page investigation on James Angleton in 2015 at Georgetown University. So the CIA went to Georgetown University and they took the remaining files that Jefferson Morley was using in his book. So they took the files that he was using and they re-confidentialized. I know that's not a word, but they confiscated the files and they put them back in the confidential. They made them confidential again. This was back in 2015. And this 4,000 page investigation on James Angleton is still confidential. It's not released. They tell you they released the JFK assassination records, but the truth of the matter is, who's the one who gets to decide what is considered a JFK assassination record and what's considered not a JFK assassination record? I've spent way too much free time investigating the JFK assassination to tell you that there are documents that are in the most random parts of the U.S. government. However organized you think the U.S. government is, it's not. It's very much so disorganized. You'll have things in the National Archives. You'll have things in FBI field offices that might be related to the assassination. You might have things in State Department. State Department archives. So whenever you submit an FOIA request, the Freedom of Information Act requests, a lot of the times it kind of depends, because I'm reading online, whenever you submit them, you have to be careful because you don't want to annoy them if you send too many at once or if you send them in parallel. But sometimes you kind of just have to send them in parallel to different agencies, because one agency might have a few files related to something, another agency might have another, and they might not have seen those files for like 70 years. And then they take the files out and they're like, oh, damn, this should have been part of the JFK assassination file release, but it's just been hidden here and nobody actually took the time to look into it or to pull up these files. It's all a mess. It's all a mess. So whenever they tell you, oh, the JFK files have been released, no, they haven't been. They haven't been. There's still things like this that haven't been released. So much of the back and forth regarding Israel, of course, and John F. Kennedy, specifically Israel's nuclear weapon development, hasn't been released. So much of it hasn't been released. The RFK assassination, that's another thing. I'm still have to do that whole series on that. I'm going to try to make another video, make a video on that tomorrow. But that's another thing where they say that they released all the documents. How do they know what is considered part of the RFK or JFK assassination documents? Do you think that they have it all clumped up together? I'll give you another example. For the Robert F. Kennedy assassination, the security guard behind Robert F. Kennedy, Sirhan is the Palestinian Christian that shot in front of RFK. Behind RFK was Thane Eugene Caesar. And this is the guy that RFK Jr., his own son, believes is the one who actually pulled the trigger. Well, guess what? Thane Eugene Caesar, he's very well written about. A lot of FBI, there's a lot of FOIA requests, a lot of information that was released, even in the RFK assassination document release. A lot of information was there regarding him. But guess what? When RFK was assassinated, I know kind of now we're switching to his brother's assassination, but I promise I'll make a circle. When Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated, Thane Eugene Caesar, the security guard behind RFK, that's known and that's very well thought to be the second gunman, he divorced his wife that month, and then he dipped. Now, this was in 1968, so why does this matter? Because up until 1972, it was U.S. law that you couldn't just get divorces like you're tossing out candy. Like you actually had to up to 1972. I'm butchering the law, but there was a law where you kind of basically had to formalize why you're getting a divorce. You kind of had to explain the reasoning behind getting a divorce. So it was more in detail in the divorce papers. It was more in detail up until 1972, and then some sort of laws change. That means that the security guard who is thought to be the second gunman that ended up, that may have killed RFK, and it may have been pinned on Sirhan. Well, his divorce records are part of Ventura County. They're still out there, and they weren't part of the RFK assassination file release, even though he divorced his wife that same month. So that's pretty odd, because you would think that, if they were divorcing that same month, and then he flees, by the way, and he ended up dying in the Philippines, then these divorce records would be out, because we would want to know why was she free? Why did they get a divorce so suddenly right after RFK's assassination? You would think that would be part of the RFK assassination release. It wasn't. So I submitted a request, and I'm hopefully going to get it back in a few months, and then I'll share that too. The whole thing's a mess. The whole thing's a mess. And I've told you, it's just like I'm set on I'm going to figure something out about this assassination. It's starting to irritate me, because there's all of these files. Now, anyways, back to John F. Kennedy and back to James Jesus Angleton. We already know at this point that James Jesus Angleton was the biggest traitor in the United States in U.S. history. Him, along with Lyndon B. Johnson, some of the biggest traitors in U.S. history. The government, when they released the JFK assassination records, Donald Trump, he did it, and he wanted to just kind of close the book. And the media, the mainstream media, Fox News, CNN, everything else, they helped him kind of close the book, because they made it feel like all the records are out. All the records are still not out. There's thousands and thousands of specific files that I can actually list, and I have listed them because I sent requests for them, related to James Angleton, James Angleton's dialogue with the Mossad, James Angleton's dialogue with Israeli officials. None of that has been released because it hasn't been classified under the JFK assassination records. Why? That's you see how they kind of just mess with the laws in order to just like kind of meander around it and kind of evade what's really going, the crux of the situation at hand. So, anyways, guys, I am talking your heads off, aren't I? Let me go ahead and see some of the comments here. He was into so much low-down, double-crossing psycho. Suspicious is an understatement. Hit the like button. Thanks so much, guys. Also, what I did want to say is I recently actually hired an illustrator. If you see, I have a desk mat. I have like a Wally shop that's on my YouTube channel now. It should be under this video. If not, I'll tag the product. It's a desk mat for JFK. I actually had an illustrator make the JFK thing. The signature on the desk mat, the JFK signature, that's actually JFK's actual signature. And I had it taken, put into an SVG file or SVG file, and put onto a cool desk mat. So I thought if you guys work from home or you'd like a cool desk mat with John F. Kennedy, very minimalistic one, I put it in the shop. It took me a few days to make that design, so I hope you like it. It wasn't just AI, I promise. Okay, guys, that's it for this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video interesting, I'd appreciate it if you just go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, click the subscribe button. It helps me reach more people like you. I will post, I'm going to upload those documents to my Google Drive, and then I'm going to make the link public, and I'm going to put the link in the caption of this video, and I'll pin it in the comments too. So give me like 5 minutes after this video. I'll go ahead and do that right away. And I'll also I'll tag the JFK desk mat thing too, because I want to show it off. So I hope you guys would like that. I'll talk to you guys soon, and yeah, see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.